Good evening, everyone. We're so glad that you've joined us. I'm Leanne Githens. I'm a volunteer here at the Wilson County Historical Museum. And tonight we're going to talk about an athlete of really world renown that came from Fredonia in a time when, before Title IX, and she was courageous, she was so many things, and did so much of it on her own. So we're going to tell her story tonight. And tomorrow is the Janell Smith Carson Fredonia Relays. It was named after her in her honor last year, so the relays are tomorrow, so the timing is good on this. So, overview of her. She graduated high school here in 1965 and from Emporia State Teachers College in 1969. But before there was such a thing as organized high school sports for girls in Kansas, there was a young lady named Janell Smith who set records on cinder tracks, not the nice ones we have now, on cinder tracks of southeast Kansas. And many of those records have rarely been topped in the decades since then. She competed before there was such a thing as organized sports for girls. She represented the United States in the 400-meter dash at the 1964 Olympic Games in Tokyo. She was a two-time national AAU 440-yard and 400-meter champion in 1964 and 65, and she was featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school senior on the May 10, 1965 issue. Now, many of you that are listening already know something about Janell Smith Carson and may have read a lot of articles about her, and there are a lot of interesting facts in her obituary and the articles that were written at the time that she went into the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame. But I came across an article that was written just about 11 years after she graduated high school and was so successful, and this was in a small magazine called The Christian Athlete in their July and August issue of 1976. So I'd like to share some of that with you because it does include some information that maybe you haven't heard before, or it's written in a way that is real indicative of the time. So it starts out by saying she's 29 years old and lives in a plain white house in a Kansas City, Missouri suburb. So keep that in mind as I'm reading through this article. Her husband is athletic director and basketball coach at a small Catholic high school 3 blocks away. They drive a yellow VW Bug and enjoy tennis, swimming, and jogging. The bulk of her day is spent caring for 2 preschool sons. She is active in her church and FCA. Big deal? Actually, yes. She has been at the top and is now content enjoying a large, starting-to-fade scrapbook which contains dozens of news clippings and memorabilia that chart a magnificent track career of the early 60s, a career that spanned the globe, landing her on the cover of Sports Illustrated and shaped her current values. In fact, until proven otherwise, Janell Smith Carson is probably the best female athlete ever produced in Kansas. Interestingly, she and her contemporary, Jim Ryan, have several striking parallels. Both surfaced from rural Kansas communities, gained national attention, established numerous records, suffered Olympic disappointment, attempted unsuccessful comebacks, and progressed from nominal to vibrant faith lives. Janell began running for fun around Fredonia, Kansas at age 10. A year later, a physical education coach assembled a girls' midget division team for a Junior Olympics meet, and Janell stole the show by setting new standards in the 25 and 500-yard dashes. The next summer, she notched new marks in the junior division, 70 and 100. Her hobby turned into a year-round ritual under the watchful but encouraging eye of her father/coach, Meade Smith, himself a star JUCO sprinter. Each afternoon, he would drive to the Fredonia High Track to clock her, employing the hard day, easy day workout system. Janell tasted her first national competition at age 14 in Gary, Indiana, and brought home 3 medals. We knew then she had what it takes to become an Olympic athlete, her dad said. She finished third in the 220 and fourth in the 100, running against some women who were 10 years older. The 64 Tokyo Games were targeted and the tempo of training intensified. Beginning the spring of '64, records plummeted in practically every meet she entered. Only a sophomore, she peeled off a 10.7 century, long jumped an unheard of 19 feet, and soared over the 50-yard low hurdles in 6.9. Her 24.3 clocking in the 220 that summer was the nation's fastest for a woman. Janell qualified for dual meets with Poland and Russia, and in subsequent summers traveled to various European countries, London and Jamaica, where she was considered a teenage sensation. During the school year, and in addition to daily workouts, she managed time for cheerleading, baton twirling, band drumming, and above average grades. The spring of 1963, Janell flitted over the 70-yard hurdles in 9.2, tying a national mark and assuring her a berth in the Pan American Games in Brazil. But an ailing ankle forced her to scratch, and she later confined her running to the dashes. Though she continued to win handily, the stress of the short bursts worried her father, especially with just 5 months remaining until the Olympics. Enter the 440. Mr. Smith figured the U.S. squad needed middle distance runners and felt Janell could run the quarter under 55. She disagreed, but agreed to try. Her father talked 4 junior high boys into each running a 110-yard leg against her, and 55.5 seconds later, Janell had bettered the existing American women's record. Shortly afterwards, she unleashed a 54.4 in the 400 meters at Hanford, California, a mark that endured nearly 5 years and became the sole woman quarter qualifier for the Games. Following such a sudden and successful switch, the 17-year-old seemed a shoo-in for a medal. But 5 other women in the world, all Olympic vets, had chalked faster times, and Janell missed the finals by 1/10 of a second in Tokyo. She did the next best thing and aimed for the '68 Games in Mexico City. In 1965, she bolted to her all-time best of 52.3 in Ecuador and returned a glow about her future. Then came injuries. Her freshman year at Emporia State College, she contracted mononucleosis and was hospitalized for a month. After recovering and regaining her former form, she tore a tendon at an indoor meet and called it a career. But Mike Carson, whom she married in 1970, had second thoughts. He's a sports fanatic, Janell recalls with a smile, and shortly after our wedding, he determined to coach me into a comeback. We believed the long jump would be the easiest for me to prepare for, so Mike built a pit in our backyard. I trained hard for several months. One problem. Instead of her stomach muscles hardening, she noticed they grew larger, that sit-ups were tougher to perform. A visit to the doctor revealed she was 3 months pregnant. End of comeback. I wasn't disappointed. I'd always wanted a family, and it was finally going to happen. Today, my family's my life, but I'll always be grateful for the good experiences and memories sports afforded me. Running taught me to discipline myself, to get along with all kinds of people. I learned how to win, how to lose, and be gracious in both. The traveling and mingling with other races gave me a lot of insights. Raised in the Christian church, Janell's faith was the gradual growing type. She never doubted that God had blessed her with running ability and expected it to be developed for him. Mike started an FCA boys huddle in 1974 in St. Joseph's High, and last fall Janell launched a girls group. They participated in local and national conferences and are among the fellowship's most faithful volunteers in Greater Kansas City. An inductee of the Kansas State High School Activities Association Hall of Fame, Janell has distributed medals at the state's Special Olympics competition the past few years, but she primarily enjoys her family and faith. When Brian and Scott started school, when they do start school, I want to teach and coach again at the elementary level, stressing the fun aspect. We want to expose our sons to a variety of sports, but not push them. I was lucky to have my dad supporting and coaching me. Athletics was never a have-to, drudgery sort of deal, and I want that for my children too. So that was an article from 1976. And we know that Janell was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1965. And this is from that issue. But I'm wondering how many of you that know that actually have read part of the article about her. It is quite colorful in how it talks about the place that Janell came from. So I'd like to share that a little bit with you. In Fredonia the other night, sitting in the grandstand of a small, weakly lit, down-home type high school football stadium, I saw an extraordinary event. And this is, of course, the article's author is John Underwood. I saw an extraordinary event. Fredonia is a town unaccustomed to extraordinary events. Its population stabilized at 3,500 some years ago, and it is distinguished from the flat, uninspiring soybean country of southern Kansas only by two low hills that really are mounds. Now, I might argue a little bit with his description of this place, but there you go. Also contributing to Fredonia's landscape is the sprawling Portland cement plant, and more recently, and infinitely more appealing, Janell Smith. Janell was to run a special exhibition at an interval in the program of the annual Fredonia Relays, an event for high school boys. This is as close as she can come to legitimate local competition. There are no other Fredonia girls who take running seriously. For a time, Janell had interested her best friend, Nancy Armstrong, with whom she shares innermost secrets, hi-fi records, and many of the top honors at Fredonia High, but Nancy concluded that she was too frail and has been content to travel around with the Smiths, watching Janell run. Once Meade Smith, Janell's father and coach, conned two freshman sprinters into running as a relay against her, but only to prove to Janell that she could run 440 yards. The day had been hot, but now the night was cool, and in shirt sleeves I huddled behind a mother and her two little girls, the girls wrapped comfortably in a blanket and struggling with the back-to-front pronunciation of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Specks of dust from the cement factory blew into the eyes of grandstand fans, but they seemed used to it. Finally, there was the break in the program, and Janell came on the track. There was a spontaneous, prideful tremor of applause. "Go, Janell, go!" yelled a little girl in front of me, suddenly alert. There was another cry from a neighborhood boy who just that afternoon had offered Janell a look at his snapping turtle. Janell wore the vivid blue sweats of the U.S. Olympic team. Her cream complexion and blonde hair, puffed up in front, stood out prettily. She stripped to her track suit, revealing strong, muscled legs trim at the ankles. She is not a small girl, 5'7", 120 pounds, but she gives an appearance of slightness. She was nervous. "I do not like attention or interviews," she told me later. "It is all so unnecessary. I would rather read about someone else. I'd rather someone else got the attention, and then I could always surprise people when I did well." Bending over the blocks, she stretched one leg, then the other, and settled in. The crowd was completely hushed, as if about to witness open heart surgery. The athletes in the infield queued up along the edge, standing with their arms crossed, smiling self-consciously, watching the solitary blonde girl on the track. There was none of the usual milling. It had to be the dramatic event of the year in Fredonia. A single girl about to run 440 yards around a lumpy cinder track all by herself. You would never expect to see that again. She came out of the blocks at the gun as though she had been shot from it. The crowd loosed a relieved, "Oh!" Did they think she was going to be stuck? When she runs, Janell's hair parts away from the middle of her forehead. Her eyes squint. She bares her teeth in fierce contortion. Her stride is even and forceful. She runs with great style. The only apparent flaw is a slight hunching of the shoulders. It is not always easy to relax. She ran the 440 yards full out as one who could not stand the embarrassment another second. Her time was 55 seconds flat. Later, Meade Smith and his wife went to the only late-night restaurant in Fredonia. Janell and Nancy took a table nearby where they dawdled over hamburgers and talked of shopping for senior prom formals in Wichita, and related anew how a certain boy on whom Janell had had a crush finally asked her out. But she was now disappointed because he had been beaten out for second place in one of the night's events. "She never had a steady boyfriend," said Mrs. Smith a little wistfully. "She was so busy, and she always seemed to be too choosy, and her running always set her apart." "All we started out to do was have a good time," said Meade Smith. Meade himself was a former Kansas dash champion. He has since increased his size half again while enjoying the good life of a successful insurance man. "I was coaching our boy, Sonny, at the time, and Janell came out every day to watch. She was 10. It was easy to coach a girl at 10 because she will do anything you tell her. Later, there was another girl who worked with us, but she worried about how she looked running. Janell never let that worry her." "Did Mrs. Smith encourage her?" "I did not discourage her," said Helen Smith, the pleasant, straightforward woman. "But I did not encourage her either. I'm still not sure I like it. I think I would rather she played the piano. She had 3 years, and she sings in the choir at the First Christian Church. She is very much alone in track, and when she goes away on trips, it is hard to imagine our little girl in places like Brazil and Berlin and Jamaica." "Helen and I did go with her to Tokyo for the Olympics," said Meade Smith. "When Marie Mulder was here, she told Janell about her track club and all the fun they have," said Helen Smith. "I think Janell would enjoy it more with a group like that." "How did they account for Janell becoming such a splendid runner?" "Heart and legs," said Meade. "It is like having a great big motor in a tiny car." Well, the article goes on for quite a while, and I would encourage you to either look it up online or stop by the museum, and we'll be happy to share the rest of that article with you. I would pull out a little bit from her speech when she was inducted into the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame in 2009. She said that being a female athlete in the 60s certainly had its challenges. There was definitely a stigma back then about women in sports, Carson said. You weren't supposed to sweat. We weren't supposed to mess up our hair, and muscles were definitely a no-no. Being feminine was the name of the game. I had my mother, the late Helen Smith, and she was always there for me to make sure I looked feminine and acted like a lady. One of the biggest challenges for Meade Smith was finding suitable competition for his daughter. Dad was always trying to find competition for me, especially before I ran a big track meet, Carson said. He soon exhausted his list of high school boys for me to run against because once I beat them, they never showed back up. So that, I think, is when then they had the exhibition at the Fredonia Relays. Although she missed being part of a team, Carson said she did not lack for support, which was a key to her success. Running without teammates and a team was more than made up for by my family and the community of Fredonia, Carson said. And she ended that Hall of Fame acceptance speech with this, and I think it really says a lot about what she is and what female athletes are for little girls in this day and age. I, like many athletes of my era, consider myself a pioneer, and I just hope I can inspire young girls to follow in my footsteps and to not be afraid to follow their dreams. So, Janell Smith Carson, we have some photos to share also, and if you want to spend a little bit more time looking at those, you're welcome to come to the museum. We hope that you will enjoy the Fredonia Relays if you're in town tomorrow, and best of luck to all the athletes. Our next Museum After Hours will be in May, and I think we're going to talk about the rodeo just shortly before the rodeo happens. So thank you for being a part of us tonight.
Finish.